artist, and I've been teaching for over 50 years, teaching children and teaching adults, and I really enjoy the teaching. And I paint everything that I see. If you're wondering where I get my inspiration, we travel. We travel all over the world. Also, I come from New York, and New York is an interesting place to paint. It's very colorful. Buildings, the traffic, the cabs, the people. And now, get your palette, get your brushes, and let's get started. Welcome to From the Painter's Palette. My name is Judy Wengrovitz. I'm an artist, I'm a teacher, and especially today, I'm here to show you how to paint my favorite lighthouse. It's a lighthouse in Portland, Maine. So watch closely, get your paints ready, watch what I do. First thing I'm going to do is to wet the sky area, because I'm going to paint the sky first. And I'm using this brush. This is a square brush. This square brush holds a lot of paint, but I don't want it to drip. So I'm going to wet the sky, and then I want the sky to be blue because I want the lighthouse itself to look white. So what color am I going to use here? I'm going to use a little bit of Cerulean Blue, maybe a little bit of Cobalt Blue. Now, what's happening here is a drip. Catch the drip. Okay. I'm going to paint fast because if I don't, the sky is going to show up in different colors. And it's dripping again, so I wipe off the drip and lift it off. Using Cerulean Blue, I think this is a little cobalt. Painting it fast, I want to cover this whole area. I'm glad that it's wet because I'm going to add more blue to this. This lighthouse is in a good position. It's at the top of this hill with all the rocks below. And I'm going to get a little bit more blue. Let's try. This is Ultramarine Blue. Let's try this. The reason I'm doing this is because I have a lot of space on the right side of my painting. I want to fill up that space a little bit, so I'm using my Ultramarine Blue. And I'm working pretty fast. I want it to be a little streaky. And actually, I'm going to try something here. I'm blotting my brush, and what I'm doing now is pressing down on the brush and lifting off some of the color. Let's see if I can get any more color off. I did lift off a little bit. And I think I'm going to get the sky a little bit darker right next to that lighthouse. I have to be careful because I really don't want the lighthouse, a little fleck of paint here. I don't want to take away color from the lighthouse, so I'm a little bit careful. Okay, now I have a photograph here. And this photograph I actually took at the Portland Lighthouse, probably when my class was painting. And if you noticed, the water is very dark because the rocks are light. Let's get some color here again. And now I have, oh, I have a little bit of ultramarine. Well, that's pretty dark, actually. I'm working carefully around the rocks. There is some land further back here. I'm gonna let it dry and go over the land after it's dry. Now let's get some more water down here, and it's going to be dark too. I'm mixing ultramarine blue and actually taking a tiny drop of crimson, so it's sort of a purplish color. Leaving a little white here for some surf. I added a little water to this here. And this time, I'm adding a little cobalt. To do something different this time so that it's not all blue. I'm going to take a little bit of green. I have to be careful the color of the green I use. Whoops. This water is going to go down all the way to the bottom of the page. So, getting some white surf. And let's put a little tiny touch of green. And when I say little, I really put my brush in a little tiny dot. And I'm actually painting over some of these rocks at this point. And because they are going to be dark, And I could paint over these water with dark rocks. Just a little differently this time, too. I'm holding my brush with the square edge, and I'm going to go ahead up here so you can see some more. Every time I use this brush, I use it differently. It's always a surprise to myself. Over here, actually, the water was still damp, the paper was damp, and I'm actually doing something a little different with the brush. I wet the paper down here. I'm using my Cobalt and my Ultramarine and a tiny little drop of the green. Since it's wet this time, I'm actually sort of wiggling this brush. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the rocks. And I'm going to paint an undercolor. Let's go ahead and take a little bit of, this looks like, it's a little bit of Naples. And let's see what I have here. I don't really want it a bright yellow. I want more of a dirty color. That's good. And I'm using the Naples Yellow and a little bit of crimson. Let's see, this time okay. And some of that color is down here too. I keep putting a drop of, oops, well, let's see what happens. I put a drop of crimson. Now I mixed a little blue here. Let's see what happens now. Again, I lifted off a drip. Here's some more drips. I'm going to get a little color over here. Like some more rocks here. Well, I didn't want quite that red, so let's wipe it off. Well, this is really red. Actually, I wiped off the red and blended it into the rest of this blue. And I like it so much that I'm going to put some more. Okay, now, this is all going to be green, but it's sort of a dirty green. So I get this here, and this is it's a hooker's green, and let's see here, hooker's green, and I'm mixing a drop of orange into it. And I'm going to paint this wanted it to look like a sort of a dirty color. It's a mixture of orange, hooker's green, maybe a little bit of yellow ochre. And let's put in another yellow here. This yellow is than the other. It's a little bit more orange. I put a little bit more orange here. Actually, if you notice now, it seems that I've been using my big brush, this one with the square edge, a lot, because I have a lot of territory to cover. And again, I'm using a little bit of that yellow, New Gamboge it's called. Ooh, well, this is pretty orange. Mixed it with a little green here. Actually, I'm changing the color quite a bit. I'm going to do something a little different in a few minutes after I cover all of this. I told you that I taught classes, and I took my class to this Portland Lighthouse and sat down here and painted all this area with the rocks and everything. But then I took a walked all around to the other side of the building and the lighthouse, got a different view, which was a lot of fun. Okay, now I'm going to try something different. Okay, I have here a sponge, and I'm going to go ahead and use the sponge. And I have another strange little sponge here. Let's see what this one does. And put in some of the grasses, and there are actually little flowers. Let's try this one first. Dip it into the water. Now this is wet. Well, we're going to try it on the wet surface. And let's see what happens here. I'm going to go ahead, use my green. And I'm using a little bit of using a little bit of burnt sienna. Well, maybe a little bit of orange too. Let's see. Oh, that's a little bit too much. Let's see. Depends on how I hold this, what I get. Now, I can hold the sponge and I dab it, or stroke it, or real quick, I'm taking this I want to work fast before this dries. And what I'm using is the back of this brush. This is a beveled edge brush. And it's got a bevel to it. And my paint is just about the right with here. Okay, let's try this strange little sponge and see what happens. I'm using a little bit, I started to use yellow ochre. And okay, let's see what happens here. Actually, this sort of works pretty nicely. I'm using the same green, the hooker's green, and this is getting very dark. I'm going to scrape this off now again because it's the right thickness. It can't be too wet. If it's fairly thick and dry, it keeps off very nicely. Scrape off some more. Actually, I'm going to try something else now. Here is a tube of Winsor Newton wash. It's white, but I'm going to open it up. This is a little thicker than normal watercolor, and I believe it dries permanent. But this time I'm going to do something different. I'm going to take some of this, squeeze it out on my palette. And I'm going to take some yellow. And I'm mixing up a light yellow with my gouache. I'm using this brush, which is a pointy brush now, and actually one of the smaller ones that I brought, mixing it with gouache and yellow, and I want to get some little yellow weeds or yellow flowers. I think I'll get it even a lighter yellow, and then what I'm doing is using this strange little sponge. I'm going to wash it out a little bit, using the same white gouache, light yellow, and let's see what happens. Oh, actually it's very nice. Okay, so I'm going to continue doing some of this brushwork down to about here. I'm going to use the same sponge again. Used it with my green, a little bit of burnt sienna. Well, it's a little bit. This is a little brownish. Let's see what it looks like. Yeah, get a little bit more green on here. And continue this to the bottom, but I don't think I will. I think I will now work on the roof of the lighthouse. I'm going to put a little shadow. Little shadow on the side of my lighthouse. I'm going to get this darker, but first I'll see what this looks like. I'm going to put a little bit of the land back here. Now I'm using my Cerulean Blue. Let's put a little bit of these waves here. Okay, now comes the fun. I'm going to try some of these rocks. And so I'm going to take another brush. They are slightly different, if you notice. This one is thicker, this one is thinner. Comes to a nice point. This one I haven't wet. I'll wet it and show you the point it comes to. Comes to a pretty nice point too. Okay, so we're going to try over here. Let's see, right here is going to be my dark rocks. Okay, I'm going to use my Ultramarine Blue. Oh, it's really, really bright. And here's my burnt sienna. I hope, yes. Yeah. Okay. This is Ultramarine Blue, burnt sienna. Okay, here's goes. Put more blue in it. And this time, I'm going to take this razor blade works very nicely. Scraped off that little bit of color, and I'm going to add some more color. I'm using the same two colors. Adding a few more little rocks. Take the razor blade. And I'm pressing down on this razor blade so it gives you the shape of a rock. And actually, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some reflections of this rock. Another thing I feel like doing is that white gouache that I used before. I'm going to use it again this time, but I'm going to, ooh, it's really white. Put a little white surf over there. Okay, now we have this great big rock over here. This time I'm going to use my fat brush again, and I'm going to use it. Let's see if I can get a nice beige. I have it very wet, so I don't know if it's going to scrape off or not. Now let's try and scrape this off this time with a different razor blade. Oh yeah, it works. I'm going to add some more of that beige down here. Okay, work a little bit on this rock. These are dark rocks, so the dark rocks will give me some shape of rocks if I scrape them off. Okay, so taking my ultramarine blue, my paint is not that wet now. I use the same two colors, but I mixed them slightly different. So this has a little bit more brown in it. Okay, let's go ahead. Let's take this razor blade this time. This is a very nice, ooh, I love to do this. This is a very nice sharp. I've got to work fast before it dries up. This is a clean, double-edged razor blade. When I said clean, sometimes my razor blades get rusty and they don't come out so nice and sharp. Okay, I think we could use a little bit reflections this time. Oh. Actually, what's happening now is some of my washes here. Let's see what happens. Just getting some of the color in here to give it a little reflection. I'm going to try something else this time so you can see it. Let's hope it works. Here's my toothbrush, and I'm going to do something a little different, see if it works. I'm going to take the same gouache, I'm going to put it on my toothbrush, and I'm going to splatter my rocks. I'm actually painting my toothbrush with a little bit of the gouache, but I'm also going to wet it a little bit too. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Could be something might happen. Yeah, something happened, but not too much. I'm going to wet it. Oh, yeah. That worked pretty nice. Although I don't know if I like this hard edge. Let's go ahead. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Now, after I do this, let me go ahead and paint the roof and the building a little bit. Now, I want to get, I know I need a little narrower brush, so I want to get my narrower brush. And it's a bright red, and I'm mixing it. Ooh. Let's see what happens here. Okay. That's a little bright. Mix it with a little, let's see. I'm mixing it. I mixed it actually with a little green. I wanted to tone it down so it's not quite as bright. I might have to make it a little darker. I'm using Ultramarine Blue again. I'm going to get this a little darker. And the side of this building. Is dark. Oh, let's see. I have another. There's several little buildings here. Now I'm going to get these darker. Oh, do I dare? Yeah, I will. I'll make, there's a little fence here. Okay, let's get the windows here. I'm still picking up the Ultramarine Blue and every once in a while I pick it up, it's too dark, so I mix a little burnt sienna. And I'm going to go ahead and get these windows. Get the little windows dark. Here's some other little windows here. Now, let's go ahead and get in some of the shadows. I actually feel like doing some more grasses there. So let's do a little bit more grass at the top. Okay. I'm using a mixture, again, of Hooker's green and some other dirty color. Very often, if you look at my palette closely, it's not that clean. And actually, if you look at it right now, it doesn't even look like it has much paint on it, but it does. I want to get a little bit of shadow on that side of the building. Let's use a little bit of, put down some Cobalt Blue. And again, I'm using the Ultramarine and I'm using my Hooker's green. Get a little bit of color. Here's another little building here. I think if they let you, I believe you could get a tour of some of these buildings. Actually, some of them have restaurants in them. Now, I'm going to show you something else now. Really getting to use this gouache a lot more than I thought. Okay, I'm going to use this gouache. I'm going to make a little fence here. Okay, I put the little fence over here. Could be a little straighter, but the white fence shows up against the dark shadowed building here. And here's the white building and the white lighthouse, and here the fence is a little darker. In fact, let me make it over. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead make my little shadows here. And when I do that, I can hold my brush so that the point hits the paper, or I can hold it so the point hits it and then I spread it out. Okay, and I'm going to get some of this darker too. Here's the Ultramarine Blue. Burnt Sienna, and I could go ahead and actually I'm going to use a little gouache again this time. And okay. Okay, let's get some of the dark, let's get some more dark rocks over here. Well, which brush should I use? I'm going to go to the one that's a little thicker again. And I think I even have one thicker. Yes, I do. You can see all three. Okay, let's try the very thick one here. Okay. using my burnt sienna. Okay. Okay, let's use my razor blade here. Let's use the fat razor blade this time. Put a little green in here. Little white. And over here, I am going to, well, I have a few minutes time before I take this home and look at it. I'm going to add some more color. And I've got a little bit of burnt sienna, a little bit of orange, a little bit of green, and let's see what happens. A little bit of burnt sienna. Now I'm going to take the white and yellow. Got to squeeze out a little bit more white. get some more flowers here. And I think at this point in the painting, I think I will stop painting and take my painting home and look at it from far and see what else I have to do. And I've used all kinds of textures. If you look closely, I splattered. I used white gouache. I used a sponge. And I hope you were paying attention. So you look at my webpage. My website is judyswatercolors.com. Thanks for coming. Goodbye.